Merhabalar herkese. Hepiniz EFT Talks webinarlarına hoş geldiniz. Bugün University of Cambridge'e kabul şartlarını Kamran'dan dinliyor olacağız. Lütfen sorularınızı soru cevap bölümünden yönlendirmeyi unutmayın. Yes, Kamran, the stage is yours now.
Thank you so much, Zainab. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining this webinar. As mentioned by Zainab, my name is Dr. Kamran Yunus. I work at the University of Cambridge. I've been working at the university now for over 24 years. I'm an associate professor at the Department of Chemical Engineering and Biotechnology, where I teach. But I'm also the director for undergraduate admissions at Downing College, which is one of the undergraduate colleges at the University of Cambridge. So in this short webinar, what I'm going to try and do is give you a little bit of an introduction into the University of Cambridge. How does the college system work within the university framework? And then really go on to talk about the admissions process and talk through the steps that you need to consider if you're preparing your application to the university. But more importantly, what I would like to be able to cover is what sort of things we use to evaluate your application and what kind of attributes are we looking for when we are selecting students. And hopefully be able to show you the type of things you could be doing right now, really to help you prepare your university application. Give you an insight into what makes a competitive applicant when you apply to the University of Cambridge. And then at the end, if there's enough time, I'll tell you a little bit about the international programs that we run at Downing College, which is an example of a supercurricular activity that we offer to international students. So to start with, a little bit about the University of Cambridge itself. When you become a student and study at the university, you become a member of the department and faculty where you will be studying and based. The department and faculty, like any other university, is there to provide the course content. They're there to deliver the lectures, the seminars, the practicals. They're there to do all your assessments. And ultimately, they're all there to award you your degrees and provide you career advice. Now, how it works at Cambridge is the colleges work in synergy with the departments. And they provide the students with all their accommodation, their dining facilities, their recreation facilities. They also support students with their learning and provide one-to-one tutoring lessons known as supervisions. But most importantly, what the colleges also do is they do the admissions and the selection of the student. So when you apply to the University of Cambridge, you have to apply to one of the 29 undergraduate colleges. And that college then reviews your application and decides whether they're going to admit you to study a particular subject at the University of Cambridge. And every college has its own quota of how many students they admit, and they'll have a quota for each subject that they admit for. To kind of give you an idea, when I'm teaching at the Department of Chemical Engineering and Biotechnology, I may have a whole classroom full of students, but they will be all made up of students from different colleges. And every college has its own quota of how many students they admit. So my role as the Director of Admissions is to oversee the admissions for Downing College. And like me, every college would have someone like me as a Director of Admissions or admissions tutor, and their jobs are to oversee the admissions and selection process. So hopefully that gives you a little bit about information about what a college is. I thought it'd be useful to show you a picture of Downing College. This is an aerial shot of the college grounds. And the campus is actually a 20-acre site right in the center of Cambridge. And hopefully what this slide illustrates is all the type of facilities a college provides. So there's all the dining hall and eating places and social spaces in the college. There's also accommodation in college, and students are guaranteed accommodation for 3 years of their undergraduate degree. Every college has a chapel, and this is a space often used by students, and it's used as a place where students can get together and socialize, come together as part of a community. There's also a library, which is open 24 hours. There's 24-hour security on site. Downing also is quite unique. It has a lot of art and drama kind of sort of spaces that students can explore their interest in drama, art, and music. So you might be studying history, you might be studying engineering, but if you have a passion for music, art, and drama, you can get involved in the Dramatic Society or get involved in running the art gallery. So there's lots of options there. And as I said, every college, they provide a number of facilities, which also include the dining hall. This is where students would have breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. And there's also lots of different types of sports facility in the college. So hopefully this kind of gives you an insight, the type of things that are provided by the college and what a typical college will look like. What I want to do now is really go on to talk about the admissions process. If you're someone who is thinking of applying to University of Cambridge, there's a number of steps you need to consider as part of your application. First of all, thinking about the course you want to apply to. There's over 30 different courses on offer. They cover over 65 different subject areas. So there's a lot of choice there. And my advice is, if you're thinking about applying to a university, go away and do your research. Really look up what the courses have to offer. For example, if you are interested in a topic such as psychology, really ask yourself, what is it that you find fascinating about psychology? Is it the applied side of psychology, in which case subjects such as philosophy, theology, or even human social political sciences may be of interest to you? But if you're really interested in the science of psychology, then maybe subjects such as psychology, behavioral sciences, or natural sciences, where you can go on to specialize in neuroscience, might be the more appropriate route. The point is, you really should do your homework and pick the course that you're really going to enjoy. Then the next point here talks about which college you're going to apply to, choosing the college. Now, as I mentioned, there's 29 undergraduate colleges in Cambridge, and they're all fantastic places. It's really a personal choice which college you choose. Some are new and modern, some are quite old and traditional, some are based in the center of Cambridge, like Downing, some are based slightly outside of the center of Cambridge. So it's really down to you to kind of decide what kind of college you want to go to. And really, again, go and visit their websites. Come and visit them on the university open days, where you can actually get an opportunity to look around the college. Now, having said all of that, many students, when they apply, don't want to have to choose a college, in which case you can make an open application to the university. And all that happens is your application is allocated to a college by the university centrally. Whether you're a direct applicant or an applicant that's come through an open application process to the college, it doesn't make a difference. When I receive my list, I don't get to see who's an open applicant or who's a direct applicant. I just get given a list of students which have been allocated to Downing College during the admission season. Now, the other point is, depending on what subject you're thinking of doing at Cambridge, you may have to think about the admissions assessments. Some of the subjects, such as engineering, medicine, computer science, maths, economics, law, these are some of the examples of courses which require you to sit an admissions test. Now, if you're required to sit a test, it's important that you understand when the registration deadlines are, and you understand when you have to sit that test by. If you do not sit the test on the prescribed dates or register for the test by the prescribed time, your application will not be considered at Cambridge. So please make sure you are familiar with this. If you're not sure, talk to your schools. Your school counselors should help you. If you're still unsure, contact the college you're thinking of applying to. They will help you with this process. Now, the other point talks about the UCAS application deadline. This is the 15th of October if you're thinking of applying to Cambridge. And again, the portal opens up in September and is open all the way through to the end of January. So you can submit a UCAS application form between that window of September to January. However, if you're thinking of applying to Cambridge, your application must be submitted by the 15th of October. If it's submitted after this date, your application won't be considered. Once we've received your application, we ask you to fill out a further questionnaire, which is known as My Cambridge Application. And this is us gathering more information. I've visited Turkey a few times now, and when I've spoken to students, many of the students are doing your high school diploma, the national curriculum in Turkey, but are combining it with AP curriculum or IB curriculum or the A-level curriculum. What we want to know in your My Cambridge application is, what are you studying right now? And what what courses or modules have you studied as part of the qualification that you're trying to achieve? The reason why we do that is because if we ask you to come for an interview, we want to know what you've learned so far. And so we can base our interview questions on knowledge you've already gained. Another thing is submit and written work. For some of the arts and humanities subjects, we may ask students to submit us 2 essays. These are good examples of your writing skills. These should be essays that your teachers have marked. And if they've given you feedback, I would always encourage you to include a 1-page synopsis of how you would improve that essay now that you had feedback. Now, one other thing is, for some subjects, such as classics, history of art, architecture, if you are shortlisted for an interview, we may ask you to sit a test. And again, the college you've applied to will be able to provide you all the information. And if you are invited for a subject where there is an at-interview assessment, like if you're invited for an interview, there's an assessment at the same time, the college would let you know about that. And again, there's lots of past papers available, so you can familiarize yourself with the process. Now, it's around the end of November. This is when we've received all your applications. We've had time to review them, and we will make decisions about which ones we're going to invite for interviews. And the interviews take place at the first 2 weeks of December, and the outcome of the application is announced at the end of January. So hopefully what I've done in this slide is gone through the steps you need to think about, but I've also hopefully highlighted the timelines involved in your application being processed. In terms of how do we assess your application, we look at a number of different things. We look at your academic record. How have you done so far in your studies? What are your predicted grades for the subjects you're about to sit your exams? We look at your personal statement. We want to see what sort of supercurricular activities you've done to really further your knowledge outside of your school curriculum. We want to see your teacher's reference. We want to see what your teacher has to say about you. And in particular, what academic achievements do they highlight in your reference? We'll look at your test scores. If you applied for a subject where you have to sit a test, for example, if you're applying for computer science or economics, you have to sit the TMUA, the test for mathematics for university admissions. Now, there's no pass or fail mark in this test, but what we do is look at your individual score and compare it against a gathered field. So, for example, for computer science, we receive over 2,500 applications. And what we will be doing is looking at your score and comparing it against all of those students which have applied for computer science. And if you're within the top 20% against the gathered field, your application will be considered to be competitive. We look at your written work. We want to see what sort of critical thinking skills do you have. How do you go about presenting 2 sides of an argument? How do you go about presenting your own interpretation and opinions on your subject? We'll look at extenuating circumstances. We want to see if your studies have been impacted due to anything outside of school. For example, if you've been unwell or if you've had a family bereavement, which has impacted your academic studies. We want to be able to take that into consideration when reviewing your application. Now, lastly, we look at how you've done at the interview. And here we're trying to see how applied are you in your understanding. And I'll be giving you some examples of this in the later slides. But in a nutshell, we look at all of this information together, and there is no kind of fixed recipe of how we go about selecting students. Every application is considered on a case-by-case basis, and we'll look at all of this information together in a holistic manner. Ultimately, we're trying to see if you have academic ability and potential. We're trying to see, do you meet the subject requirements? Are you going to be suitable, have a good fit for the course that you're applying for? Do you really have a genuine subject interest in the area that you're applying for? Those are the type of things we're looking for. The type of things we don't consider is extracurricular activities. If you play sport at a very competitive level, that's great, and I encourage you to do that. That develops your competitive spirit, your discipline, and these are key skills that are very, very useful. However, at Cambridge, we only assess on academic merit alone. Your school, your background has no bearing on your application. Many students which are from abroad always ask me, am I at a disadvantage if I'm an overseas student? And the answer is no. If you are the highest ranked candidate on academic merit, you will be considered for a place. So hopefully that's given you an idea about the application process and how do we go about assessing applications. What I really wanted to do was just touch on some parts of the application which often students find quite difficult. One of them is the personal statement. When you submit your UCAS application form, you have to submit a short statement talking about why you want to study a particular subject at university. This is around 650 words, and now it's been divided into 3 questions. But ultimately, what we're trying to do in this personal statement section is get students to focus on what sort of supercurricular activities have they done. Talk about what they've learned from that experience and talk about how that's helped them make that an informed decision or wanting to study that subject at university. So when you're writing your personal statement, think about 1 or 2 good examples of things you've done that have helped you broaden your context around your subject, helped you develop a deeper insight in your subject, and discuss what you did, what you learned, and how has that helped you to reflect on your decision to wanting to study this subject at university. So remember, when you're writing your personal statement, keep it simple, keep it direct, keep it relevant. Don't overanalyze it, and try and think of 1 or 2 good examples which really demonstrate your passion for your subject. The other area which students often struggle with is the interview process. If you are shortlisted for an interview at Cambridge, remember you've gone through an extremely competitive selection process. You're being invited for that interview because we are really interested in your application. So remember, when you come for the interview, we want to engage you in that discussion because we're really curious about your application and want to explore it more further with you. And remember, when you come for the interview, we're going to be going into an academic discussion. We're going to be asking you questions around your subject. We're going to be testing your independent thinking skills, your critical thinking skills. We want to see how you can work through a problem that you've never seen before or you're not familiar with, and how do you apply what you've learned so far to solve that problem. So if you come for a science interview, we're going to ask you to do a problem, a science problem. And we want to see what logic you apply, what steps you take to work through the problem. If you come for an arts and humanities interview, there might not be a right or wrong answer to the question we present to you. And it's about your critical thinking skills and how you interpret and present your own opinions. So remember these things when you come for an interview. Remember to think out loud, and remember you are not expected to know the answer. But what we really want to see is you engage in that discussion. Now, the next thing here, what I've been trying to present is what sort of skills do we look for when we're reviewing our applications? We look for skills such as applied understanding, critical thinking. Yeah. We want to see how do you have a broader context around your subject. Now, in order to develop those key things, it's important that you do supercurricular activities. And what I've done in this slide here is showing you some examples. For example, going and listening to academic talks is a great way of you connecting the dots between what you're learning at school and how it's been applied in different applications. Listening to podcasts is a great way of you hearing from subject specialists debate and analyze and present their own interpretations around the subject. What sort of resources do they pull on to build their own interpretation and opinions? Gives you an insight into what sort of critical thinking skills you need to have. Reading is a great way of broadening your context around your subject. Joining academic societies is a good example of an interactive way of engaging in your subject. Participating in competitions and challenges is a great way of you testing your academic skills. And going on trips and excursions is a brilliant example of how you can visualize your subject. The point is, these are all very good examples of how you can explore your subject. What you need to be doing is thinking about which format you enjoy learning. If it's reading, then do a lot of reading. If it's listening to podcasts, then engage in different types of podcasts to really develop your critical thought process. If you're someone who likes to learn by visualizing your subject, then think about going on trips and excursions where you get the opportunity to do that. The point is, there's lots of different resources available, and they're all free of charge. It's important you engage with them and you develop your critical thinking skills and your applied understanding. And supercritical activities is one of the core and fundamental ways you can do this. Now, while you're doing supercritical activities, remember, it's important that you develop your critical thinking skills. So ask yourself, what did you learn? What did you think about the things you were reading about? What surprised you? What did you agree with? What did you disagree with? What impact has it had on you? And what are you going to do to learn and discover more? And lastly, what can you do with this new knowledge? Those are the type of questions you should be asking yourself whenever you're doing supercritical activities. Now, what I've done here now is gone on to really show you why critical thinking skills are so important. So what I've put here is an example of a typical type of interview question that you might get if you go for a STEM subject. Sometimes when you apply for engineering or chemical engineering or natural sciences, they may ask you to do a mathematical problem. And I've given an example here where you have this function called which says f of x is equal to x divided by 1 plus x squared. Now, in an interview, I've used this question in the past. I may ask a candidate to tell me what this function looks like. Now, I'm looking for key things. I'm trying to see what observations does the candidate make. Does he start thinking, or do they start thinking about, how does this function simplify for very large values of x? And if you think about it, when x is extremely large, adding one more to it isn't going to change its value. And so this function could simplify to x over x squared, which is 1 over x. And if you think about 1 over x, we all understand what that function looks like if you're doing A-level maths. Yeah. Likewise, if you take a small value of x, as x becomes even smaller and smaller and smaller, x squared becomes even more smaller, which means the x squared term becomes insignificant. And this function then becomes f of x is equal to x. So you could see, by doing some observations, you can start drawing up some conclusions of what's happening at different limits to this function, and how that then allows us to build up a quick way of sketching what this function looks like. So what observations can we make? What logic do we use to illustrate the shape of the function? How can we simplify this function by using logical steps? Can we think about a relationship between other functions to help us solve the question that's been presented to us? And lastly, I really want to see, how do you use the knowledge you've gained through your academic studies so far and apply it to something that you've not thought about before? So it's important that you start thinking about your subject in that format. And another example, let's say you're interested in engineering or physics. This is a question where we are testing your understanding in physics. We want to see how you can apply what you've learned so far at school to a problem that you might not have thought about before. And in this problem here, you have a candle. And the candle has a certain type of shape when the flame is burning. And you could see it's like a tear shape. And so in an interview in the past, what I've asked candidates is, why does this shape look like a tear shape? Why does it not look like a triangle or a square or a rectangle? Why is it a tear shape? And again, I'm looking at what observations can you make. Do you think about, why does heat rise? How does the temperature impact the density of air? And why does that then mean that hot air goes up? And what happens when the air goes further away from the flame? How does the density and the temperature change then? And how does that lead to certain types of convective currents, which creates this drag to make this point on the flame? So the point is, it's about seeing how you can again apply what you've learned so far to something you've never thought about before or paid attention to much before. For those students which are interested, once you figured out why the shape looks like a tear shape, ask yourself what would happen to the shape of the flame if you were to take this candle and go to the space station and light this up in the space station where there is oxygen but no gravity. How would the shape of the flame change there? And again, it's about your critical thinking skills and what logic you apply. Here's another example. This is for law. This is a much more open-ended question. When you're looking at the humanities and social sciences or the art subject, there may not be a right or wrong answer. And in this question, it's saying, should it be illegal to run a red light in the middle of the night on an empty road? Why or why not? And here we want to see, do you start asking sensible questions like, what is the point of law? Should the law be based on preventing harm? Is it sensible to think that people have the ability to judge when it is and when it is not dangerous? Does that cause chaos in society? Yeah. What are some of the advantages of making this legal or keeping this illegal? So it's an open-ended question, and it's a debate. It's a discussion, and we want to see what critical thinking skills you bring to play. Last one here is a history one. Imagine we had no records about the past at all, except everything to do with sport. How much of the past could we find out about? And again, I'm trying to look at how you tackle a question about historical research. Can you start thinking about which countries were involved in the sport in history? Did the groups of countries play the same sport? And does that give you any information about the international politics between those countries and how the empires were growing in those times between those regions? Other examples are, did everybody play the sport? Could that tell us information about the health of people in society? Lots of different ways of taking this question forward and analyzing it to come up with your own thought process of what you think could be useful ways of interpreting or inferring information to be able to interpret things about history. So hopefully what I've tried to do is illustrate the importance of critical thinking skills. Why is it important that you think about your subject in a much more applied manner? And how is it going to really play an important role in you standing out as a competitive applicant? And hopefully what I've illustrated is the importance of supercurricular activities and why they're so important in helping you develop your thought process so you can think about these questions in a much more abstract way. Now, very quickly, I'm nearly running out of time here. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about some of the international programs we run at Downing College. This is a summer school, which is an example of a supercurricular activity. We set these up over 4 years ago, and we're the first college at the University of Cambridge to set up a program which is aimed at high school kids. It is a program which is run by Downing College at the University of Cambridge. The program is basically got two different types of strands. One's an advanced program, which is 4 weeks, and there's also a foundation program, which is a 2-week course. Both of the courses, we still are receiving applications for Program B, which is around the 26th of July to the 8th of August, or Program C from the 9th of August to the 22nd of August. This is when the residential elements for these programs are going to be running. If during the summer you are interested in attending the summer schools and you can make any of these dates for the summer schools, please do get in touch with us. The idea of the advanced program is to give students who have a really particular interest in a subject an opportunity to really learn about it at an advanced level. And these are the 8 different strands that we're teaching on the advanced program. In terms of the foundation program, there's 2 different themes. You could either do the STEM subjects or the humanities subjects. And the whole idea in the foundation program is you spend 2 days doing taster lectures on the various STEM subjects or the various humanities subjects. And you combine that with an academic skills workshops in the afternoon on how to do presentations, how to write essays. With both programs, we offer the opportunity for students to do a research project. And again, the research projects are aimed to get students to really start thinking about their subject. And at the end of the 2 weeks, you have to do a presentation and hand in a 2,000-word essay, which gets assessed and marked. Ultimately, what we're trying to do in these summer schools is giving students an opportunity to experience what it's like to live and study at the University of Cambridge, an opportunity for them to broaden their academic perspectives around their subject, and really get time to spend with academics at the university, which teach the subjects that they're really interested in, and learn from them firsthand how they should be thinking and applying their understanding around their subject area. I hope that was useful. Sorry, I had to go through this very fast. I only had half an hour to cover the talk because we need to allow enough time for questions. But I hope this was useful. If you're interested in the summer program, please do contact us. You can register your interest using this QR code, and we will get in touch with you to provide you more information. The programs will be running again next summer as well as next winter. So if this summer isn't possible, but you're interested in maybe attending next year, again, get in touch with us and we can give you more information about that. I'm happy to take any questions now, and I can see there have been some questions which have been posted on the chat. And I can see that there might be some questions which have been posted on the Q&A. What I'm going to do now is try and work through some of these questions. Okay, so I can see one question. Can we talk about master's program admissions, please? Okay, so if you're interested in postgraduate admissions, it's slightly different to undergraduate admissions. In postgraduate admissions, you apply to the department and faculty. So my advice is, if you're someone who's interested in doing a master's or a PhD or a postgraduate degree, look up what postgraduate courses are on offer, then contact the course administrator and find out the application process from them. Normally, application deadlines for postgraduate courses sort of close around September, October, and sometimes in December for you to start your academic studies the following year. And the GPA score for postgraduate course, depending on the course you want to do, could be anything between 3.7 as a minimum to around 3.8 as a minimum, depending on the course. And there's another question about, as a 41-year-old graduate, do I have a chance of being accepted to a master's degree? Of course, there's no age discrimination at Cambridge. If you are interested in applying, we will not be discriminating against you on your age. Someone wants to ask about questions for PhD admissions. Roughly what percentage of accepted international PhD students manage to successfully secure full scholarships or funding from Cambridge? Now, if you're thinking of applying for a PhD, funding is normally through the Cambridge Trust. There is only a limited amount of funding there. So that's something you're going to have to kind of explore yourself. One of the key things is when you apply for a PhD, look up the department you're thinking of doing your PhD, look up the academic that you're interested in, the subject that they're researching, contact them, ask them if they'd be interested in offering you a place, and then submit a research proposal of what things you want to research under their supervision. If they are willing to support it, then submit your application to the department. And then if your application is successful, then you can apply for a scholarship to the Cambridge Trust. And the scholarship deadline normally is in December every year for applications for applicants who want to start their PhD the following October. Hello, will postgraduate programs completed in a different major than the undergraduate degree be considered during the application process, or are postgraduates and doctoral programs only available for fields related to it? That's absolutely fine. It really depends on your situation. In some cases, we may accept postgraduate applications from a different degree. It depends on the degree that you're applying for and the core kind of academic skills that they expect you to already develop to be able to engage in the postgraduate course. But in most cases, there is a degree of flexibility there. As a bachelor's degree student in ELT, what can I do to attend a master's program at Cambridge? Number one, if you're thinking of trying to do a master's at Cambridge, make sure your GPA score is very high. I would always try and aim for a GPA score of about 3.7, 3.8, and make sure it's consistent throughout each year. So make sure you do very well in your current degree, and also make sure you have some funding for doing your postgraduate degree. Another question. Hello, Kamran. Thank you for the presentation. I was wondering what support you have for international students adjusting to Cambridge. That's a very good question. If there is any university where the degree of support for students is at the top level, I would say that's Cambridge. I studied as an undergraduate at the University of Bath more than 24 years ago. And when I arrived at Cambridge to start my career, I was overwhelmed by the level of support and infrastructure in place for students. So when students arrive, they will have a lot of support. More importantly, it's a very international community at Cambridge. So when you arrive, you will get to meet lots of students from different parts of the world. And it is really easy to adjust because you all are going to be in the same boat. Another question, are there special scholarship opportunities specifically for Turkish students? I'm not sure if there's one specifically for Turkey, but you can apply for scholarships through the Cambridge Trust. If you go on the Cambridge Trust website, if there is anything for Turkish students there, it will be listed out and detailed on the Cambridge Trust website. Okay, the last question in the Q&A says, if someone comes from a non-traditional background like fashion design, how can they prepare for economics academically? Right, so if you really want to do a degree in economics, then having a very strong background in mathematics is going to be essential. So make sure you have good mathematical skills. If you're doing something where you want to go on to do a postgraduate degree in economics, then you need to look at the entry requirements on the website, on the department for that postgraduate degree in economics. In most cases, they will ask you for strong mathematical skill sets. Last question here, it says, there's more coming up. In job applications, are social activities or academic achievements more important? That's a very good question. Job applications, I think it's going to be a bit of a both. They're looking for people who are academically bright, but also have core skills. Like if you play sport, are you competitive? Are you someone who can work as a team player? So they all play a key role. And one thing to remember, when you get to university, there's lots of opportunities there for you to develop your interests and hobbies. Okay, I guess another question. Thank you for your interest. I'm a final year undergraduate student in molecular biology with a current GPA of 3.44. Would you recommend contacting the professor and the lab I'm interested in directly before applying, or I don't have a chance? If you're thinking of applying for a PhD, then contact the professor. If you're thinking of doing a master's degree, that might be a bit too low for a master's program, but get in touch with the department and faculty and speak to them about this. All right, another question has just popped up. What is the impact of academic publication records in PhD applications? Okay, when you're about to apply for a PhD, we're normally looking for people who are just straight out of university. And whilst you're doing your PhD, you hopefully will get a chance to publish some of your research. But if you're someone who already has some publications under their belt, of course, that would reflect well on you. It will show your academic skills, your research skills, and showing you being able to successfully publish some of your research work with your skill sets. So it's always good to have that, but at the end of the day, it's not a deal breaker if you don't. Is it possible to do a collaborative project with students from different disciplines at the University of Cambridge? Does the university support entrepreneurship? Of course, there's lots of opportunity for that. You can join up with other students and compete for seed funding for any kind of business ventures you want to do. There's lots of different types of initiatives to really encourage students to really develop their skills, but also develop their future opportunities after they graduate. So there's a huge opportunity for that. Okay, so the question is, thank you for your presentation. It was really informative. How can I practice for interviews? That's a very good question, Simai. My advice is, the best bit of advice I can give any student which is about to apply to university is speak about your subject, talk about it, vocalize your thought process. When I first started teaching at Cambridge, I realized, although I did my undergrad and my PhD in chemistry, I only really understood chemistry after I had to teach it. So my advice is teach your subject to someone else. Find someone who doesn't have a clue about your subject and spend time with them teaching them about your subject, explaining things to them, because that really will help you to vocalize your thought process, but also help you crystallize your own understanding around your subject area. Okay, are there any subject-related AI lessons in subjects? Okay. So AI is a hot topic nowadays, and it's becoming more and more interesting at university. When it comes to AI, we do ask students to use it, but use it sensibly for their work. And, there's a lot of people asking me, are there any degrees which are now going to become redundant because AI has now taken over those sectors? I don't think we need to worry about that too much right now. There's always opportunities for careers and jobs, even though there's this AI beast which is evolving and growing. And it's about how you use it sensibly. That's the key thing, I would say. Another question, what qualities do you most look for in students during Cambridge interviews? What is the best way to prepare for an interview? Like I said earlier, talk about your subject, vocalize your thought process. What we're looking for in an interview is really your ability to apply your understanding. How do you approach a problem? I don't expect you to know the answer, but what I want to see is a clear thought process which is working in the background to try and help you piece together information to come up with a sensible answer to a problem. Okay, I'm going to keep trying to go, but there's a few more questions here. During the application process in the coming months, would it be possible for you to share your email address so we can reach you? If you have any questions related to admissions and you wanted help, you can reach me by contacting my staff at the college. So that's admissions@dow.cam, which is cam.ac.uk. So admissions@dow.cam.ac.uk. That will then send the email to my staff. And if there's any emails there that I need to answer, they will then talk to me and help me formulate an answer to send back to you. So if you contact them, then I should be able to get back to you. For a PhD in clinical psychology, is it a requirement for us to do our master's in the UK? Is clinical psychology master degrees from Turkey acceptable for applying for a PhD? Again, I think that should be okay, but you need to really contact the faculty and department and the supervisor, the academic you wish to do your research with. All right, one more question here. Is it important that I've got AA or a GPA of 4 for most of my major classes related to molecular biology, but my cumulative GPA is 3.44? I would say your cumulative GPA needs to be around 3.7 or 3.8, but see how you get on. All right, I could see there's some questions in the chat as well. I'll try and see if I can answer some of these very quickly. I'm currently studying, okay, I think I've answered that one. What do we look for? Oh, hang on, this keeps moving around. Here we go. What do you look for most in students applying from Turkey? What do you think makes a strong personal statement in job applications or social activities? So what makes a personal good statement is somebody who's really talks about 1 or 2 good examples of supercurricular activities they've done. That makes a good personal statement. Talk about what you've researched, what did you learn, and why has that helped you make that formed decision. It's about your critical thought process that we really want to read about. In the Cambridge applicant, what we're looking for, and when we are looking for students, when we're interviewing them, is your critical thinking skills, your applied understanding. So those sorts of things need to really shine through. And if you really, really want to help prepare yourself for university, do supercurricular activities. That's the best way to prepare for yourself. There is a website on the University of Cambridge. If you go on Google and type in supercurricular activities, University of Cambridge, it will take you to a website which says how to improve your application to Cambridge. And then you can click on the subject you're interested in, and it will give you a whole list of supercurricular activity resources, podcasts, videos, books, journals that you can start reading. Okay, if a student comes from the UK college, is it the same fee for the summer school? So for the summer schools, this is only open for international students. If you are someone who is studying in the UK but are an international student, you can apply for the summer school and the fee is the same price. For undergraduate programs, is there a scholarship? Yes, you can apply through the Cambridge Trust. If you go on their website, there's lots of information there. How can I practice for interviews? I think I've answered that question. So I've got one here. My son is planning to study an undergraduate on maths. And what do you suggest besides AP classes? For example, research is important. For maths, it's all about practicing your mathematical skills. If you're doing APs, make sure you have at least 5 APs at a grade 5, and make sure Calculus BC is one of those APs. For maths, that's really important. And I would also take up some of the AP courses in the various physics modules as well. I also have a European Union citizenship. Are there any scholarships specifically for EU students? Unfortunately, I don't think there are, but again, I might be wrong, but there are scholarships available on the Cambridge Trust website. Can you text here? Okay, oh yeah, there we go. Right, great. I think I've got through all the questions. Because see, there's 2 more here. I'll quickly answer those, but I think we need to wrap up after this. As a second question, I wanted to apply to engineering in Cambridge and design engineering at Imperial. Despite applying to design engineering, I have a passion for electrical engineering. How would you advise me to shape my personal statement? That's a very good question. My advice is write your personal statement in your UCAS application form, which is generic, one that would apply to all your other UK university applications. When you fill out the My Cambridge application, in there will be an opportunity for you to write a separate personal statement for your application at Cambridge. And there you can talk about why you're particularly interested in a degree in Cambridge. One last question here. I am pursuing a master's degree in computer science. I am interested in healthcare and have a prototype product of healthcare. Can I work or do research in the healthcare field at the University of Cambridge? I think that should be possible. Again, it really depends on the research field you want to go into, in particular what area of things you want to research, and whether there is a supervisor who will be interested in supporting your application. All right, I think we're now come to the end. I think we're now out of time. So thank you very much again, everybody, for joining this webinar. I hope this was useful. I hope this gave you a good insight into the application process at Cambridge. For those undergraduates, or those students which are about to apply for university for an undergraduate course, best of luck with your application. I wish you all the best with your applications and your future aspirations. For those for postgraduate studies, again, best of luck with your applications. And please do get in touch with us. If you have any questions, we will try and help you as much as possible. Thank you very much again, everybody. Zainab, is there anything else you need me to cover?
Yes, thank you very much for the great presentation, Kamran. We had a lot of questions and you covered them all. Thank you for your answers as well. And also I would like to thank the participants in Turkish too. Katıldığınız için teşekkür ederiz arkadaşlar. Umarım sizin için de faydalı bir webinar olmuştur. University of Cambridge ile ilgili diğer sorularınız için chat kısmında paylaşılmış olan mail adresinden ekibiyle her zaman iletişime geçebilirsiniz. Bir sonraki webinarlarımızda görüşmek üzere. Thank you very much again, Kamran. It was a pleasure to have you in our IFT Talks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.